Wade Hatch, Motivational Wrangler, inspires the need within all of us to take control of one's life's path and start riding down the freedom trails that bring perspective and clarity to your life. In his homespun, down-to-earth style, Wade helps you break away from the herd mentality to create the kind of life you deserve.
You know, growing up on the ranch wasn't always work. I mean, throwing the hay and riding the horses and that, and we had cattle and that, but I worked with my uncle, and what a hoot he was. Uncle Woody, I'd call him. And Uncle Woody come home one time with a raccoon. He came home with a skunk, and boy, were we glad that it was descented. But he came home one time, and he had a American buffalo, you know, the bison. And it was just a yearling, but he stood about this tall. And I remember I was thinking, man, he's like 6 foot, because I was only 4'18". And so he was huge to me. And he said, Biscuit, he said, I want you to take care of Huggy Bear. I said, Huggy Bear? And he said, yeah. And I said, who's Huggy Bear? And he took me outside and he showed me this bison. And I don't know why he named him Huggy Bear, but that's what he called him. And I said, okay, man, 16 years old in charge of a bison. I was excited. I wasn't smart enough to know the dangers, though, so I put a halter on him, and it wasn't but about 2 weeks, and I was leading him around the ranch. I was having a great time showing all my buddies and everything. Well, every now and then, you leave the pasture and that, and a bison decides, you know, you've heard the saying that you can't corral a bison. They're going to get out every now and then. Well, we'd come back and we'd get phone calls and that saying, hey, there's a buffalo out. We'd go down there, and sure enough, Huggy Bear would be out on the side of the road and that, and we'd have to get him back in the pasture and that. So my uncle and I decided, you know what, you can corral a buffalo. You just got to know what you're doing. So we went down and we bought some of these big old railroad ties, about 12 foot tall, and we sunk them in the ground about 6 feet. And then it was my job for the next month. He said, I want 4 holes in each one of these, and there was about 120 of them, I'll bet. And so for the next month, I drilled 4 holes in each one of them, took a 3/8-inch cable, steel cable, wrapped all the way around them, and at the end of it, my Uncle Woody and I, we put Huggy Bear inside. 2 weeks went by, and Huggy Bear's still standing there. 3 weeks went by, Huggy Bear's still in the corral. 4 weeks went by and said, Uncle Woody, we did it. That old saying that you can't corral a buffalo, it's a bunch of hogwash. We're sitting there leaning on the fence post, admiring our work. Huggy Bear's still sitting there. About the time we turned around, went back, I looked back at Huggy Bear and I noticed he'd went down with his horn, he's scratching his head on the fence post there. About that time, he took his horn and he took that bottom cable. He flipped both railroad ties up over his back, and they flew up over his body, and he proceeded to walk right on out that pasture. We looked at each other in amazement, and my Uncle Woody looked at me, and I said, I guess he buffaloed us, didn't he? Now, what we learned about that was each one of us, when you want to get out of the herd mentality, you have to dig down deep. And when you have the spirit of Huggy Bear, when you have the desire that Huggy Bear had, you don't have to be corralled. You can get out and get on those happy trails, those freedom trails that I've been talking about. And get out and do it today. You see, folks, over the years I have found that choices are seemingly made for us. Buy this, wear this, vote for that. Every generation experiences it. We're all caught in it one time or another. You go to work, you say, I'm going to go home today. Things is, you go home, but you're taking work with you. You don't leave it at the office. By the time you get home, you've had 3 more phone calls, 4 text messages. You have 12 emails sitting there waiting for you. And if you have a fax machine at home, you probably have 3 faxes waiting for you. And we're all addicted to it. You can't leave them there. You hear the chimes go off, you got to answer it. You got to respond to it. Technology is so great nowadays. We're so connected, it's hard to get disconnected. Yeah. You know? This is what I call the herd mentality. When I'm in the herd, I find it hard for me to make specific, personal, and exciting choices for myself. You've got to find a way to get out of the herd, right up onto that high mesa, where you can get a good vision of that herd, and to look at what I call the freedom trails. And if you can ride out on those freedom trails. How many of you realize that you have the same dreams today that you had 10 years ago? Daily routines hardly ever change at all. Let me tell you a little bit about the Wranglers' lifestyle. You might learn a little bit about Wranglers. I think I know a little bit about Wranglers. Back in the 1800s, they had a word that is derived from the American Spanish words meaning to change out. It was called remuda. Remuda was a big circle, and on the cattle drives, they had about 90 to 100 horses. And at night, they would bring all these horses in the circle. And in the morning, the Wranglers, as they was getting up, the trail boss would come around and ask the Wranglers, what tools do you want to use today? Now you notice I use the word tool, not horse. Well, the Wranglers all had 3 to 7 horses that they were in charge of, that they liked to use. Now, they would tell that trail boss, I would like to use Ace today, because yesterday I might have used Tawana or Jack or Fred or whatever the horse's name was. Well, and then the trail boss would put the rope over the horse's head. That horse was trained to back out and come out and go over to that Wrangler, and then they would saddle that horse up. And that was the horse that Wrangler would use, his tool for the day. It wasn't a friend, it was his tool. You could tell a good Wrangler by how he took care of his tool. If he brought the tool back at the end of the day, worn out, torn up, and in bad shape, he wasn't worth keeping around. A good Wrangler would take care of his tools. Well, in my remuda, I use 3 tools, and they are called exit, evaluate, and energize. And that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to tell you how to use these 3 tools to work on getting out of the herd, up on the mesa, and start traveling down those freedom trails of yours. You ready to do that? Yeah. Okay, let's get going.